Hey everyone, welcome back to another video tutorial on Cartesian planes. So in our last video lecture, we discussed about Cartesian planes, we discussed about Cartesian coordinates, and we discussed about quadrants. So in this lecture, we'll solve some problems where we'll try to plot these points in the Cartesian plane. The first point is 5, 0. Let's say that this is our point P. So the coordinates of point P, are 5, 0, where this 5 tells you about the abscissa and this 0 tells you about the ordinate. That is, ordinate means that it is the story on the y-axis and this is the story on the x-axis. Okay. Now in our graph, for our discussion, each unit is equal to 2 blocks. So 2 blocks, we have taken 2 blocks equal to 1 unit. In your examination, you'll be asked in the terms of centimeters or inches. But for our discussion, we are taking 2 blocks is equal to 1 unit. So 1 block, 2 block is equal to 1 unit. Another 2 blocks, another 1 unit. Okay. Now abscissa in this case is 5. Okay, so abscissa in this case is 5. That is, you have to count 5 units on the x-axis. So 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit and 5 unit. So that comes here. Okay, now if 5 comes here, let's take the red color. If 5 comes here and now the ordinate, that is equal to 0 unit in this case, means that you have to count 0 unit on the y-axis. So it means that you don't have to count anything, because 0, you cannot count 0. So that is here only. So this 5, 0 means that it's actually talking about this point 5, because we know that on the x-axis the ordinate is 0, and similarly on the y-axis your abscissa is 0. Okay, so this 5, 0 is actually here, where this is talking about the x-axis, the number of units on the x-axis, and this talks about the number of units on the y-axis. Since this is 0, it means that this point P is actually on the x-axis itself. Okay. The next point is 0, 5, right? So 0, 5. So this is the point P, the coordinates are 0, 5. It means that this 0 is talking about the x-axis, this 5 is talking about the y-axis. Okay, so on the x-axis you have to count 0 units. It means that you don't have to count anything. Now 5 tells you about that you have to count 5 units on the y-axis. So count 5 units on the y-axis. So this point comes here, right? This points come here. Now 0, 5 means that it is actually talking about a point that is on the y-axis and which is 5 units away from the x-axis in the positive direction. So this is 0, 5. 0 means 0 units on the x-axis and 5 means 5 units on the y-axis. This is a point P. Now in the third case we have 2, 5. So we have 2, 5. Now this tells us about the x-axis, this tells us about the y-axis. 2, 5 means that you have to travel 2 units on the x-axis, that comes here, and you have to travel 5 units on the y-axis. So from this point 2, you have to travel 5 units towards the y-axis. So 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units and 5 units. That's here, right? So this is, if you want to connect these points, it's actually like this. First we count 2 units on the x-axis, and from this 2 units, from this point you count 5 units from this on the y-axis, that is this point. This is the point 2, 5. In this one we have 5, 2. So in the case of 5, 2, this tells you about the x-axis and this tells you about the y-axis. Okay, so on the x-axis we have to travel 5 units. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5 units, and from this point 5 you have to travel 2 units towards on the y-axis. So 1 unit and 2 unit. So this comes here. Okay, so if you want to connect this, this is the point 5, 2. In the next case we have -3, 5. -3, 5. So -3, 5. Okay, so this tells us about the x-axis. Now you note, if you see this number -3, this -3 is actually talking about on the negative direction of the x-axis, and this 5 tells you about the y-axis, and this is positive, therefore we are talking about this positive side of the y-axis. Okay, so -3 means that in the negative direction you have to travel 3 units. 1 unit, 2 units and 3 units. So we are here, and now we have to travel 5 units on the y-axis. So from this point travel 5 units in the direction of the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. This comes here. So if we connect it, it's something like this. This is -3, 5. Now if you notice, this number is of the form negative, positive, and therefore it is coming in the second quadrant. It's coming in the second quadrant, right? It's coming in the second quadrant, minus and positive. Now we have -3, -5. -3, -5. This tells you about the x-axis. This ordinate tells you about the y-axis. Now your x is -3 and your y is also -5. Okay, it means that the negative direction of the x-axis -3, the negative direction of the y-axis -5. So in the negative direction of the x-axis you have to travel 3 units, 1, 2 and 3 units, and from this -3 point you have to travel 5 units in the negative direction of the y-axis. So it comes here. So if you connect this, this is like this. So this is -3, -5. Now if you notice, this coordinate is of the form, this point P has a coordinates as negative, negative. That's why it is coming in the third quadrant. Can you see here? In the previous one, that is in this case, our point, this coordinate point was coming in the second coordinate, but here it is in the third quadrant. Okay. Now we have 5, -3. In this case of 5, -3, it's actually talking about the positive direction of the x-axis, and this is talking about the negative direction of the y-axis. Okay, so in the positive direction of the x-axis you have to travel 5 units, so that comes here, and from this point 5 you have to travel 3 units in the negative direction of y-axis, so that comes here. So if you connect this, so this is the point 5, -3. Now if you notice, this is in the fourth quadrant. And why it's in the fourth quadrant? Because this point P has a coordinates as positive, minus. So since this plus comma minus, therefore it is coming in the fourth quadrant. Remember, first quadrant is positive comma positive. The second quadrant is negative comma positive. The third quadrant is negative comma negative. And the fourth quadrant is positive comma negative. Okay. The last one is 6 comma 1. So 6 comma 1 is again positive comma positive. It means that it will come in the first quadrant. So this tells you about the positive direction of the x-axis, and this tells you about the positive direction in the y-axis. So you have to travel 6 units in the positive direction of the y-axis, that comes here, and from this point you have to travel 1 unit in the positive direction of the y-axis, that comes here. So if you connect this, you'll get this point P, that is 6 comma 1, and it comes in the first quadrant.